I'm a storyteller. I look for stories that want to be told. Sometimes I find them in old trunks, dusty and forlorn, in thrift shops or antique stores. Sometimes I find them in old clippings like the one from the Washington Times dated July 8, 1911. The title caught me. It read, Old Fort Massachusetts seen a narrow escape for Lincoln. Rebel bullet came perilously near, ending the president's life. And then, Capitol menace by Early's forces, stirring days of year recall when the nation's executive really figured in battle. When I read that, I knew I was onto a good story. I became a detective and hounded the library. I found another piece of the story in the Boston Sunday Herald, dated August 14, 1904, entitled Lincoln and His Boys. It contained the following account. Boston Sunday Herald, August 14, 1904. As Early's boys advanced, much woodland was cut down and many houses burned, the occupants given only a few hours to get out. One of these was old Aunt Betty Thomas, who owned the ground where the fort was erected, and in the very center of which her modest cabin was constructed. She lives on one edge of the fort today in a quite comfortable cottage, but is yet to be paid by the government for her home being destroyed. She has had a bill pending for more than a quarter of a century, but the debt is only one of the many obligations that the federal government has never met. She is 90 years old now, but her cheery old heart still holds out hope that she will be paid before she dies. The bill is in better shape now than ever before, having last session passed the lower house of Congress and been favorably acted upon by the Senate committee. Final action upon it should be had at the coming session of Congress, and tardy justice done the old woman who said only the other day, I'd have moved out willing enough anyhow, if I never got nothing, though I was always free-colored anyhow. I had discovered the tale of the Civil War enacted right here in this place, Fort Stevens, formerly called Fort Massachusetts. In the early 1850s, this place was a battlefield, and what a battle it was. Abraham Lincoln personally commanded the Union troops who fought here. I sleuthed the description of those Union Army defenders of Fort Stevens submitted by Major General Alexander McDowell McCook, and he said, I hazard the statement that there has never before been so heterogeneous, yet so orderly an army. The hale and hearty soldier, the invalid, the convalescent, the wounded, and the quartermaster's employees side by side, each working with a singleness of purpose and willing to discharge any duty imposed upon him. Major General Alexander McDowell McCook, 1850. So I learned that Confederate Lieutenant General Jubal Anderson Early, dispatched by General Robert E. Lee, came too late to take the capital city of the United States by way of the 7th Street Road, as was proved by the defense offered there by the fort so well planned and built by the officers and men of the 2nd Pennsylvania Heavy Artillery. I also learned that these forts were not built without sacrifice of the men, women, and children who were not armed. This fort had 2 magazines, one where Emory Chapel stood, and the other to the west where a depression is still visible. In the Hopkins Real Estate Atlas of the District of Columbia, 1894, I found out that this Brightwood area of the district, an 88-acre parcel north of Rock Creek Ford Road and West Piney Branch Road, had been jointly owned by Elizabeth Thomas, G. Proctor, and Sarah Diggs. This parcel includes that portion of Fort Stevens that's not on the property of Emory Chapel. I had discovered Elizabeth Thomas known as Aunt Betty. I also discovered that it was on one of President Lincoln's visits to Fort Stevens that he was halted by the sight of a colored woman with a baby in her arms, sitting under the sheltering branches of a sycamore tree that grew within the fort. The woman and the child were weeping. Piled all around them was a collection of household furnishings that had been their home, but was now dismantled and in ruins. For the cellar was needed for a powder magazine, and the house had stood exactly in the right place for it. The president looked at it, looked at the ruins, and turned to the woman and said, "It is very hard, but your reward shall be great." Only the reward had not yet come. I'm an actress who looks for stories, and I like to tell the stories in their own words, and I found Aunt Betty. I want to tell you her story in her own words. Words I found and pieced together like a quilt. Now, if you give me a second to put this down, Aunt Betty will talk to you. You're not the first one to come here. They always come, they ask questions, and I tell them the truth. They want to know who I am. Well, I say, I'm a colored woman, ain't that plain? Yes, indeed. They want to know who my folks were. And I tell them, my grandmother was Irish. They called her Nell. My grandfather was Charles. He was a West Indian slave. Then my father was George Proctor, born in Piscataway. He was an Indian. Yeah, we had all kinds of mixes up in here. They called this place Vinegar Hill. Why? I don't know why. Maybe because they thought all these kinds of mixed blood mixed together would cause vinegar. I don't know. People ought to be glad to have blood. They lost a lot of blood when those big guns started booming. I was raising livestock and farming with my husband, and some of these soldiers was coming up talking to us, but we did not understand what they were saying. Somebody told us that they were speaking German. Presently, a general by the name of McCook, he came up shouting, raising a ruckus. "All you women and children, get out of here. We're gonna burn all these cabins." I said, "What for?" He said, "I'm gonna build a line of defense." I said, "You can't build no line of defense with these troops. Can't none of them shoot a gun." He says, "Never mind. All of these cabins will be burned." Well, it's all we have, this house, this land, me and my husband. I shouted and I screamed, but it did no good. That day the soldiers came in and they tore up and tore down my house. And I was sitting under the sycamore tree with my baby in my arms. And I was upset and trembling inside, not knowing what we was going to do. Presently, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I didn't even look up. That's how distraught I was. But when I did look up, I looked at a tall man with a top hat on, and his face was white as a ghost. He had furrows in his brow, and around his eyes, deep, dark circles, and the whites of the eyes were streaked with red, like from watching all night or crying, or maybe the smoke from those guns. He looked at me and the furrows around his mouth moved when he said, "I'm sorry. I know this is hard, and I'm sorry I had to give the order that your house be destroyed. But I promise you that you will be rewarded greatly." I didn't know then, but I know now that that was President Abraham Lincoln speaking to me so soft and so kind. After a while, me and my husband, we was working around the fort. I was doing laundry and cooking for the soldiers, and I looked up on that wall, and I saw a man, tall, top hat, going back and forth, taking charge, and I said, "Somebody get that fool off of that wall." That was President Lincoln too. By and by, after the big war was over, I had thought that we'd be all right. But some stinking rip snuck up behind the president and shot him in the head. Now, I believe him. Some people say no, but I believe had President Lincoln lived, he would have paid me for my house. I believe that. But when y'all come and ask me questions, I got a question for you. Did you come to bring me my money? Did you? Nobody. That's the way it is. When I tell this tale of Aunt Betty, I get a surge of loving my country. Right now, we all need to have a surge of loving our country. And this is not scripted, but I'll ask if you can stand and say with me the Pledge of Allegiance if you feel it in your heart. Because I feel it in my heart, and I want to do it. The flag is over there, but we're here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your rapt attention.